Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm delighted to call to order the first meeting of the Sustainable and Livable Communities Committee to order. This is the first meeting of our committee, I'd like to offer a quick overview of the process, and then perhaps my co-chair, Councilmember Jennifer Adams, can say a few words as well. And then finally, we have Mr. Mayor Corey Woods, the third floating member of the committee, joining us today as well, and he may want to add something. I do want to note that the Councilmember Adams and I will be chairing the meeting alternately. So today's my day and I'm delighted to be here. So our committee covers many topics related to sustainable and livable communities. In fact, I joke with the mayor that sustainability is just everything. So we could just take every single topic and put it under our committee, but I had to hold back. But so these topics can range from the more obvious sustainability initiatives like water, energy, recycling, climate action, green infrastructure, but also to a broad range of quality of life programs that make it wonderful to live, work, and play in Tempe. So we've intentionally kept our initial work kind of general because we hope to hear from our residents about the topics that we should be focusing on. We want to hear from our residents about what livability means to them, what sustainability means to them as well. We want to be able to focus our energies in our committee into those resident infused interests as well. So note, there's no formal votes or decisions happening about city programs, policies, or budget items. That doesn't happen here. Our role is to explore these topics with staff and stakeholders and residents, community members. We want to make recommendations to our council colleagues. So the votes and such will take place at regular council meetings. And I want the process, and Councilmember Adams would agree, I know, to be really transparent. We want to make sure that we're engaging with our residents, being inclusive, and we want it to be easy for you to understand what's going on and to be part of whatever you choose to be. So you can share your thoughts with us by filling out the comment card about any item on the meeting agenda, or you can reach out to us directly with thoughts, questions, ideas. And someday when we host this meeting in person again, and all of us long for that, we long to be able to meet with you directly. It'll be a lot easier for people to speak at meetings, but for now, in this virtual environment, we need you to fill out comment cards in advance so they can be read into the record for any agendized item. So the link to the comment cards can be found on our committee webpage at www.tempe.gov, and then it's /SLC, Sustainable and Livable Communities, SLC. And you'll find contact information for the committee members, for any staff, and then for non-agendized questions as well. So I'm really eager to get started. So Councilmember Adams, do you have anything to add to all of that?
Yes, Councilmember QB, thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
Oh, good. All right. Okay, good. Well, I am very excited to get started with this committee. We have so much to do, and I can't wait to tackle every challenge that comes before us. Echoing what Councilmember QB has already said, sustainability and livability are so important in this community. With this committee, we will be able to tackle challenges in a more collaborative and inclusive process. And those of you who know Councilmember QB and I, we like to have a lot of inclusive processes before we go forward with decisions. We do want to hear from all of you on your concerns and your ideas, so feel free to contact us at any time. And just really glad that you're all participating on this phone call, and please don't be shy because we are looking for ideas from all of you. We've got great residents in Tempe and so bright, and just please reach out to us. So Councilmember QB, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. I can't think of anybody better to co-chair this committee. I'm so glad to be working with you. We get stuff done, and always with an eye on our neighborhoods and our residents. And I'm so proud to be launching this committee with you today. So thank you so much. And Mr. Mayor, was there anything you wanted to add?
Thank you, Councilmember QB and Councilmember Adams. Just wanted to very quickly say I'm just excited. This is the first meeting of the new council committee structure, the Sustainable Livable Communities council committee, and I would totally agree. I couldn't think of two better council members than Lauren Kuby and Jennifer Adams to lead this group. So I'm very excited to see what comes out of this. And I'm very excited to see and receive more input from our residents about what items they think we should be taking up, not only in this committee, but in front of the entire city council. So I just wanted to say thank you to council members Kuby and Adams for spearheading this, and just looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So let's move on. The next item on our agenda is reserved for public comment, and the committee welcomes public comment. And according to the Arizona open meeting law, we can only discuss matters listed on the agenda. Matters brought up by the public under public comment that are not listed on the agenda cannot be discussed by the committee today. So there's a 3-minute limit per person in effect. So Kristen, do you have any comment cards to read for the meeting?
Councilmember Kuby, Councilmember Adams, Mr. Mayor, we have one comment card today, which I'm happy to read into the record.
Thank you.
From David Sokolowski. In Japan is 85, and the country is famous for having more centenarians than anywhere in the world. In the USA, our average life expectancy is 78. On average, women live 6 years longer than men, and white Americans live 3 years longer than Black Americans. Many people are missing out on valuable years of life, and Tempe should work to reduce these disparities. We should set goals to improve longevity, both in terms of health span and lifespan. Medical science continues to rapidly advance, and longevity research is a multi-billion-dollar industry. How will Tempe adjust to aging communities? How can Tempe improve public health and quality of life in the long term?
Thank you so much. Thank you, David. Appreciate your service on the Transportation Commission. And I appreciate you bringing attention to aging in place, because I am someone who wants to age in place in my wonderful city of Tempe. So I appreciate that perspective. So the next item on our agenda is item 3A, current items and updates. And there are no current items in progress, as this is our very first meeting. So we can move on to item 3B, which is new items for consideration. And if it's okay with you, Councilmember Adams and Mayor Woods, we want to change the order of these items to start with 3B3. It's the animal welfare update. So I know the mayor is only able to be with us for a portion of the meeting because he has another important event to attend. So I'd love Mayor Woods to be able to hear more about the work that we're doing in animal welfare. So is that okay with you, folks? Councilmember Adams and
It's all right with me, Councilmember Kuby.
Very good. So let's.
Sounds great to me as well. Thank you.
Well, great. Well, let's turn it over to Kristen Gwynn. I just want to mention that, Kristen Gwynn, before she came to us as a council aide, before her master's in public administration and public policy, she continues to be actually an animal rescue advocate and practitioner, and she was a vet tech. So she brings a lot of unusual and interesting skills, not just to the council position, but to the work that we've been doing in animal welfare. And Vice Mayor Keating and Councilmember Adams have been on the animal welfare group working with me for a number of years, and Corey began it all with a TNR program many years ago. So I'm eager to hear what Kristen has to say about our policies going forward, and sort of give an update about what's going on. So turn it over to you, Kristen.
Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share this presentation here. Hopefully that works. There we go. Good afternoon, council members Kuby and Adams, Mayor Woods. As the work of what was once the Animal Welfare Working Group transitions into this new committee, I'm here to give an update and overview of the status of the various topics that you and Councilmember Keating had identified to work on previously as part of that group. As you all know, the Animal Welfare Working Group was somewhat unique. While the majority of council working groups were focused on a single issue or policy, and then later closed when their work on that issue was complete, animal welfare was the only group without a clear city department or staff member to refer these issues to for follow-up. So that meant that every bit of work on any animal welfare issue has had to go through that working group and now through this committee without a team of staff in the background to move the issue forward. And it meant that our progress was slower than I know the three of you would have liked. So as a reminder, here are the issues that the Animal Welfare Working Group has been exploring over the past few years. So early successes included the commercial pet sales ordinance, which, although later amended due to state preemption, the city is still actively enforcing. Also, the anti-tethering law and the updates to the barking dog ordinance were successfully completed as well. There were several projects still on the horizon at the closure of the working group, including exploration of bully breed protections, particularly around housing, as well as the feasibility of a local animal abuse registry, facilitating more low-cost spay-neuter services in Tempe, the addition of an interactive map of pet-friendly locations in the city, monitoring the plans and having a liaison to the Maricopa County Animal Care Facility in the East Valley, and ongoing discussions about adding to and improving our dog parks around the city. Additionally, there were 2 issues that the working group began working on, but are still in progress. You were exploring a new approach to animal hoarding cases that would provide an alternative to law enforcement, deploying animal welfare resources alongside behavioral health professionals, but that issue was put on hold when we lost contact with the animal rescue partner we had been working with. And then, of course, there is the Community Cat Management Program piloted in 2019 and approved by the council to go citywide just 6 months ago. So I'd like to give you a brief update on the status of that program. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Mayor Woods for his leadership on this issue as one of the first members of the Tempe City Council to see the benefits of trap, neuter, return, or TNR in Tempe, and to understand the role that the city could play in facilitating that, as he helped put together the first agreement with the Animal Defense League of Arizona to create a fund that people could donate to in order to fund TNR for Tempe cats. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for giving us that start. 5 years later, in August of last year, the City Council approved taking what was a small pilot program citywide and matched the generous donation from local philanthropist and businessman Jerry Brock with 10,000 city dollars to invest in traps and other equipment to begin to focus on TNR for the cats living on city property. I'm happy to say that we were able to purchase 50 cat traps, seen there in the bottom left photo. We were very lucky to have the amazing folks over at Fabric, the fashion incubator space, make and donate to us over 100 trap covers out of the leftover fabric from the medical PPE gowns they began making during the pandemic, shown there in the center, which is not only efficient and cost effective, but also sustainable, which I hope makes you all and Dr. Braden Kay love them all the more. I've also begun working with staff to identify the various city facilities that have cat populations living around them, and also identifying the community volunteers who are currently feeding them, but that is still a work in progress. That last photo on the right was taken while we were out at the Apache Police Substation, trapping a mom and her 4 kittens last October. At the same time, the neighborhood program has begun to flesh out a mission beyond just TNR and some newly defined goals, including eliminating population growth, educating our caregivers on best practices and on ways to address the negative behaviors that are impacting their neighbors, and ending the isolation of our colony caregivers by bringing them out of the shadows and building a community where they can support each other in the work that they do. So I want to talk just about a few of the ways that we're doing that. We've created a page on the city's website that outlines the elements of the program. It also links to a survey that gives us information on the caregiver and on their colonies. Additionally, our data and GIS team has created this amazing, there's the survey there, this amazing cat colony map. Sorry. Where caregivers can mark the location of their colonies, list the number of total cats that they're feeding and how many still need TNR. Each of those green dots that you see is a cat colony. And when the public clicks on the map on one of those dots, they see basic information on the number of cats and the nearest cross streets for the colony. They can also get some idea of how many others in their neighborhood are also caring for cats. When I click on the green dot, I also get the caregiver's name, contact information, and whatever other notes I choose to make. As you can see, I've divided the city into 57 individual territories, divided by major arterial streets and freeways that cats typically don't want to cross. We're encouraging our caregivers to work together and to organize within these neighborhood territories to identify all of the cats and their caregivers within it, so that we can be more complete and more geographically targeted in our TNR efforts, and even identify when TNR for all of the cats in the territory has been completed. Finally, we've created a private Facebook group for our program participants, and they are using it daily to organize in their territories, to ask questions, to provide information and advice, and to ask for or offer assistance to others. What used to be a lonely and difficult task is now becoming a shared experience and a chance for more experienced trappers to pass along what they know and for people to create a resource base that anyone can access. So in addition to developing better colony managers, the cornerstone of the program will always be TNR, and there are two different ways that we're currently providing that. The first is through our contract with Altered Tales. Caregivers working within the program can choose from 2 locations in the Valley and are able to schedule appointments anytime that there's availability. This is for those people who are a little more independent, able to house the cats after trapping and for recovery after surgery, and for people who are able to transport their cats to and from the clinics on their own. Although we do provide the traps, and sometimes we'll connect them with someone who can help them with trapping if needed. Tempe TNR at Altered Tales is happening every week, and the clinics have even set up a way for people to donate to the program, much as they used to do with the Mayor's ADLA Fund, to help stretch our Tempe dollars just a little further. As we continue to hold our mobile TNR events quarterly as well, they're currently being hosted in the Clark Park Rec Center, and the surgical team can TNR approximately 50 cats in a single day for those events. These events allow for a much higher level of support, so we use them to reach the caregivers with very large colonies or those people who would, for a variety of reasons, never be able to do TNR through Altered Tales. These are week-long events that begin with a city van delivering traps. We utilize 2 full nights of trapping with cats being transported by us back to the rec center, followed by surgery day, a night of recovery with us, and in some cases, delivery right back to their front doors for release the next day. These are labor-intensive events for sure, but they allow us to reach those colonies we would likely never reach any other way, and who would otherwise keep right on breeding and multiplying. I do want to mention our incredible partners in these mobiles, MASH, the Mobile Animal Surgical Hospital team led by Dr. Trina Neufeld, and our funders with Fix Adopt Save, who also bring their own team to run the events on the day. They reached out to us last summer when COVID had shut down most of our TNR clinics and offered 2 mobile events to finish TNR for our initial pilot program. The events actually went so well that they agreed to do 4 more over this fiscal year, with the first 2 taking place in November and January, and the next one scheduled for April 14th. This is something unique to Tempe, as they do not do these mobile TNR events for anyone else, and they tell me there is no other mobile unit doing this kind of high volume TNR anywhere in the Valley. To date, they've given us about $16,000 in free TNR services and are poised to do much more, having just committed yesterday to another 4 mobile events in fiscal year 21-22 as well. So here's where we stand by the numbers. 250 cats TNR'd in the past 12 months, but the capacity for many more this year as the program is really hitting its stride. We currently have 186 participants in the program, and 141 of them have filled out our online survey. Their colonies represent 29 of our 57 territories so far. We even held a virtual training to begin educating on colony management best practices, and again, a whole lot of free TNR given to our residents by the mobile team. I also want to point out that picture on the right of your screen is of the cats at Clark Park for the January mobile event, where we did 54 cats as a part of that day, while another 36 cats had appointments at Altered Tales over that same 3-day period. So we actually set a new record in Tempe for a TNR of 90 cats in a single week.
Hey, Kristen, that mirror makes it look even more impressive. Nice work putting the mirror in there.
Okay, now I want to touch briefly on some of the things that we've learned as the program has evolved and what they mean for us going forward. We've learned that about 1/3 of our caregivers fall into that category of unable to do TNR without our support. But I want to be clear, that doesn't just mean financial. Most of them actually need that. It means trapping help, transport help, housing and recovery help. And without it, their cats would not be fixed and would continue to reproduce. So those labor-intensive mobile events are really the key to us getting our feral cat population under control. It also allows those who are able to do some hands-on learning and become more independent in the program over time with our help and support. Another lesson has been just how many of our caregivers truly struggle with the costs of cat food and veterinary care when a community cat gets ill or injured, as well as the emotional toll it takes to be constantly stretched so thin. Burnout is very common in this community. There is grant funding available that could help, but not for everyday individuals. So it would take an organization like the City of Tempe identifying and applying for those grants, which would make a huge difference for our caregivers, but would also mean additional staff hours needed. I've also learned that no matter how well somebody is managing their cats, for every caregiver of a large colony, there are at least 2 to 3 neighbors struggling with the impact of those cats on their own properties. Tensions between caregivers and their neighbors are often high. So finding solutions can require mediated conversations and sometimes city intervention. We regularly share lists of tips and tricks and products for keeping cats away from yards, but often these problems are very individual and unique in nature and require on-site troubleshooting to identify the best solutions. One of the fastest ways to reduce colony size is to remove friendly cats and kittens from the streets for adoption, but there is a drastic shortage of foster placements, and cats who could have homes end up staying on the streets because there's no room in rescue. City efforts in recruitment and training of fosters could make a huge difference very quickly, and a partnership with ASU to utilize students in pet-friendly homes as rescue fosters might boost rescue capacity while also allowing students to experience having a pet without the long-term commitment during their more transient university years. What has become very clear is that the need for our services far outweighs available resources. 11 new people joined this program in the last week alone. All of them want to spend time talking through what their colony needs, ask questions, schedule TNR as soon as possible. I typically get between 5 and 10 cat-related emails per day and at least 2 phone calls. And while I love fielding these calls and educating people on colony management, response times can be slow, as my responsibilities as a council aide obviously take precedence. And I know it's frustrating for those who are waiting for help. I also have a new appreciation for the work that the Animal Welfare Working Group was trying to do around animal hoarding, as this is more common than I expected in the TNR community. The need for a balanced and compassionate intervention plan with mental health supports coupled with animal welfare resources is real. And I would encourage this committee to return to that topic sooner rather than later. And finally, I've learned that when I took on the community cat management program, I became, whether I meant to or not, the unofficial face of animal welfare in Tempe. And so I find myself confronted with some unexpected special projects. For example, this week I'm working on my second case of animals left behind by an owner who has passed away suddenly and family with no idea what to do or what resources are available. Last week, I was contacted by caregivers who feed a colony at the old Tempe Depot who are worried about the upcoming demolition and construction there and how much time they have to relocate the cats who live there safely. The week before that, it was a request from the Gilbert Feral Cat Coalition to share information about our program with their mayor, as the Gilbert Council has recently prohibited the feeding of feral cats in public spaces. So most of these special projects involve people needing assistance maneuvering through layers of bureaucracy or who need a liaison to various organizations who can speak on their behalf. And it has highlighted for me just how many of these ongoing issues there are and how emotional they can be for the people who are trying to solve them. So in closing, I will say this. There is a need and a desire in the community for animal welfare issues to be addressed more comprehensively in the city of Tempe. Those issues can range from problems with off-leash dogs in our parks and the growing number of pets that get dumped or abandoned in our neighborhoods every year, to concerns about coyotes or javelinas wandering our city streets, or simply considering the impacts of, on our companion animals and urban wildlife as a part of our climate action work. There is not currently a place within the city with the capacity or frankly the expertise to deal with this broad spectrum of animal-related concerns. So on behalf of the many Tempeans who continue to reach out to me every day, I pass along their request that this committee might begin to explore solutions for creating one. And with that, I will take any questions.
Well, I guess I'll start. Thank you so much, Kristen. The program is so well, it's so popular. I'm aware of that. And we're also walking the talk because the council agreed last year to fund TNR and focus on our own facilities, because we have to make sure we're walking the talk and following sound principles in cat management on our own buildings as well. And I know how popular it is, and it's very easy for people to participate and get access to TNR for their cats. And we get a lot of compliments, actually, she's not going to say it, but from animal welfare organizations across the valley, compliments about Kristen, because I think they invest in this program because they know there's an animal welfare professional at the helm. But it's also challenging to run this. I mean, you're the aide to Councilmember Doreen Garland and myself, and this has become a burgeoning and very popular, as we said, program. Yet you're a full-time council aide, and it can be frustrating trying moving ideas and policies about animal welfare through our system, because there is no place in the city where we have animal welfare headquartered. And it's nobody's fault, but we've seen just an increase in the need for a lot of animal welfare programs. So we haven't had a home it hasn't had a home in Tempe, but adjunct, we've taken on that role and shown like incredible success. And we've received funding from philanthropist and businessman Jerry Brock, funding from Altered Tales. And so we've been able to bring in funds to the organization, but you can't really run that in a piecemeal way. So I think it is time to bring this issue to the fore. And some may wonder what livability has to do with animal welfare. Well, a lot of us who love our animals know instantly that it does have a lot to do with livability. But there's also people who are, annoyed by the presence of cats, who see bad cat behaviors. But when you manage a cat colony, those behaviors go away. So it's also important for those who may not feel the need to feed cats, but will benefit from solid cat management. So I would like to see us recommend to council and do it in March so we can get on this as soon as possible, an animal welfare position within the city of Tempe. And we can be innovative here. We won't be the first city in America. The first city in America to do such a thing is New York City. But we are the city that makes waves in the desert. We proudly proclaim that. And we are known across the valley as a city that is already innovating. And I think it's really important when you think about animal welfare issues, ranging from how we deal with urban wildlife to companion animal issues, that there's an opportunity for investment here. And I think it would be, frankly, wildly popular with our residents from the reaction we've seen to the community cat program. So, and thinking about this and talking to Kristen over the years, I really think that the position would be best located within the Office of Sustainability. So I know Braden Kay is on the line. I just want to see if he agrees with that, because I know there's animal issues that relate to climate action, but it's also an important opportunity to look at all of our city operations through the lens of animal welfare, like we do with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. We look at the city through the lens of diversity and inclusion. And some of these issues that just come to mind is how can we make our dog parks more animal friendly? We know that Roundup is a likely carcinogen and a known carcinogen for animals. We know that there's a lot of work around Tempe Lake and a dam that impacts wildlife and birds. And we also, know there's a whole bunch of city-related animal welfare issues that we could accelerate. They're in the wings, so to speak, that we could deal with. So I wanted to ask first to Braden Kay, Dr. Kay, if this is a position that would fit within the sustainability office.
Thank you, Councilmember Kuby. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I think that this is an issue that I'm happy to review and look at. The animal welfare as a topic isn't something that we currently have in our climate action work, but I have seen cities, as Kristen mentioned and as you mentioned, there are certainly cities that have biodiversity work and work that I could see a position like that doing work that does fall under work that happens in offices of sustainability. So I'm happy to review a proposal and look at that fit.
So Councilmember Adams, can you weigh in on what you think?
Sure, I certainly can. I agree with you, Councilmember Kuby. Several residents. She heard us talking about cats, so Smokey has to get in on the action. Anyway, she's kind of crazy, but I love her. And she was a rescue, by the way. Anyway, I agree with you, Councilmember QB. Several residents have reached out to me about their feral cat issues, and the TNR program is exactly what we needed in Tempe to address this issue. Thank you, Kristen, for all of your hard work on getting this TNR program off the ground, but it's clear that it is a lot more work than you have time to do. I believe we need a full-time staff to manage this program and take it to the next level. There is so much more to do with animal welfare that if someone is dedicated to this full-time, I think it'd really be helpful for Tempe and to improve our residents' satisfaction and make them more comfortable with the cat situation. So I'm in full support of recommending the animal welfare manager position to council. Thank you. And so, thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilmember Adams. I know when we think about new positions within the city, we don't just sort of create them out of new cloth. It comes as a result of a pilot work or growing work or, an obvious problem that needs to be solved. And I think we've seen that there is a problem to be solved. We're solving it. We're doing it in a unique and innovative way. And so I'm really pleased to hear that Councilmember Adams agrees that we should create that position. And what I think I propose in terms of the scope of the position, I think it is analogous to our equity and inclusion manager. It's obviously a different focus, but like that position, an animal welfare officer would be working on internal policies, making sure we're walking the talk, and community policies and programming, and also evaluating all city operations in terms of how they will impact animals, how a development might impact animals. Again, like Tempe Town Lake, we're planning the whole Rio Salado project, and there are a lot of riparian areas that need to be considered when we create projects and create developments along the lake. So I'm really pleased to hear that. And again, because the budget process is almost upon us, and we do often have projects, we had the sustainability manager position come not as a result of a supplemental request, but as a result of a pilot project, and seeing how grant funding was coming in and that it could be beneficial to the organization. So I'm pleased to hear you say that. So Mr. Mayor, is there anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
Yep, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. No, I appreciate the conversation about this, and too, I think that as you said, the budget process is going to be starting very soon, so I can absolutely see, why this would be a recommendation of your group, and I think that it absolutely should, just like we had the conversation last Thursday in talking about some of the work we were doing to, help the unsheltered population in our community. I think that, this is also something that should be discussed during the upcoming budget process. We can see where our council colleagues kind of stand on it, but I do agree with you that the TNR program has been wildly successful in the city of Tempe, and that residents, I've seen, even in the time that I was off council, residents talk on social media and in private sort of offline conversations about how important that it is to make sure that we really are addressing sort of the cat population and how big some of these partnerships are. And I understand too, as you talked about from a standpoint of workload, the fact that, Kristen has kind of become the one-stop shop with relation to everything animal welfare, but she's still responsible for being a council aide to 2 council members. I understand how that also really just become challenging to do basically, kind of 1.5, if not 2 full-time jobs. So I definitely understand the need for the conversation around this, and I'm looking forward to having it discussed during budget time. So no, just appreciate you bringing forward a very kind of forward-thinking recommendation.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I guess we have consensus then to move forward. And so we want to have a recommendation to be presented to council at the March 18th work study session. So Kristen, can you work on that proposition, that proposal to the council, and perhaps work with Braden to see how actually this position might work in relationship to sustainability and livability?
Absolutely, Councilmember QB. We'll work together and get that done.
Well, thanks for all your hard work. I know you worked unbelievable hours, and Councilmember Adams, thank you so much for being involved with the trapping of cats. I have done that as well. When I first heard about cat trapping, I assumed it was some sort of inhumane process, but it really isn't. And it's amazing how quickly they calm down once those covers are placed over them. And the covers were it was so heartwarming that Fabric donated the covers and made the covers for the city. So thank you so much. And it's been great to have it at Clark Park, so people know that that's the place where the cats are brought, and then they're kept, for a couple of days, so they're able to heal and not have to immediately go out into the wild again. So that's also important, that we have a consistent place where we can have that operation take place. So thank you, Kristen.
Yes, thanks, Kristen.
All right, so now we're going to move on to 3B1, which is Livable Communities Outreach. So we put this item on the work plan because we realized we all have different definitions of sustainability, for sure, and we all have different definitions of livability and what makes a city livable. So we thought one of the first tasks should be to gather information from a wide variety of residents and businesses, nonprofits, community organizations, and make sure we understand what livable means and what that context is for our residents, and not just what we, Councilmember Adams and I, think is livable for the city. So we hope we can use a lot of innovative and fun ways to gather that information from our residents, and in a very cost-effective way. We don't have to go out and do an official survey like we do every year for our community survey, our community satisfaction survey. So tonight we invited Shauna Warner, who heads up neighborhood services, to talk about the different kinds of outreach that we could do to encapsulate the terms livability and what does livability mean to our residents. So Shauna, can I turn it over to you and you perhaps present on this?
Sure, and thank you, Council Members Kuby and Adams. Happy to do so. And so for any of the time that we go out and we kind of ask some of these big questions to our community members, we do have our online platform of the Tempe Forum that really helps get the word out. And we've had some great success in these COVID times with having people actually respond. And so just wanted to kind of share some of the different tools that we have to get the word out. But currently what we are focusing on, as you had referenced, is digital. Some of the additional kind of more creative, or even I guess I would say some of what we've learned, like talking with our Equity and Action Coalition members, is some of that in-person touch of going where people are. And so I think that could be more of a phased approach. But the thought would be maybe today, if you guys have some more direction or more ideas on how you want to ask, or if it is just kind of a general question of what is a livable community to you, and then we could come back in March with an outreach plan, or we can, if the question is simple enough, we can get it on the forum and start getting the word out, getting people's comments, and then as we see what comes in from who, we can always be flexible and add additional tools to get the word out, and or if at the time metrics allow, start doing some in-person touches to get additional input.
Thanks, Shauna. Councilmember Adams, do you have any comments to make? Any suggestions?
I'm sorry, I'm getting back on here. I'm happy to see that we're doing a lot of different avenues for outreach to the community, and I would just really like if other people have additional ideas for outreaching to our community, that would be great. So I appreciate you going over everything, Shauna, and let's just keep an open door here and get as much feedback as we possibly can. So thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember Adams. Yeah, I would ask that the outreach be mindful of the fact that not everyone participates online. And I know that you, Shauna, and Dr. Kay and Jonay from Inclusion and Diversity Program have started this program called Equity in Action. And that's really engaging with residents who may not typically be heard from in city decision making. So I'm really conscious, considering our equity focus, not just in our committee, but in our entire city, that we look to try and get the voices of those who may not be listened to as much. And when I think about livability, being an older person, older than Councilmember Adams by many years, I think about the impact that our decisions have on the generations that are coming after us. And I want to ensure that younger people have a voice here and that they could kind of weigh in. So I'd be especially keen to hear from the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council on this. And perhaps, you know, I don't want to delay everything so that we have to hear from every commission necessarily, but there are some that, you know, really stand out, like the Neighborhood Advisory Commission and what's livable to them. So I'd like to hear from, you know, our commissions if they can within a certain time frame. And I think getting an online forum up would be, I don't think you necessarily have to come back to us for approval on what the questions could be, because I think we want to leave some of it open-ended and not direct people. But I would just urge, as summing up, that we look at communities that we don't necessarily always hear from, and not just focus on online sources of information, that we reach out in a more personal way through our neighborhood groups, homeowners association groups, Equity in Action, Mayor's Youth Advisory Council, and possibly some of the commissions, if that's a doable thing. Is that clear as mud?
No, and absolutely. We do always partner with both our organized groups, our nonprofit partners, and they're great as well as getting us information from everyone that they serve as well. And our Mayor's Youth Advisory Commission as well. We go talk to them a lot, as well as Tempe Union will share a lot of what we put out. So definitely getting the youth voice there. So we will make sure and do so.
So unless, Mr. Mayor, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Mayor is no longer in the meeting with us.
Oh, okay, right. So yeah, I don't think you necessarily have to, I don't think you have to come back to us, but do you have enough feedback to be able to start that process?
Yeah, we can start, and then we will make sure that you both see it before it goes out, and then we can move forward.
Sure, that sounds great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Shauna. Thanks so much. It was a brief presentation. That's how people like them.
Exactly. I want to jump in that I could concur with Councilmember Cubey about not everyone has internet and that kind of access. So we really want to keep reaching out and with using every avenue possible. So thanks, Councilmember Cubey, for pointing that out.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. So now we're going to move on to item 3B2, that's Sustainability and Climate Action Plan Update. And there's a lot to cover here today. So Dr. Braden Kay, can you step up? I'll turn it over to you for your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Councilmember Cubey. Good evening or good afternoon, Councilmember Cubey and Councilmember Adams. I am Braden Kay, the Sustainability Director for the City of Tempe. Next slide, please. So, just as an update, you know, one of our major efforts in the City of Tempe has been our Climate Action Plan, which was passed in 2019. It's what I like to call a training wheels climate action plan. It only has 3 focus areas: energy and transportation, in terms of how we are working to lower our carbon emissions as a community, and then work on resilience to extreme heat. The Sustainability Commission recommended to the city that we have 4 highlight actions: resilient energy hubs, transportation demand management, green infrastructure standards, and green construction code. We are now doing a climate action plan update. Really, this update has two main objectives. One is we're going to collect new greenhouse gas emissions data for the city. Grace Kelly and I are working on that now. So this summer we will have an update as to how our emissions changed between 2015 and 2020. So that's one objective. The second objective is that we want to create specific agendas with critical stakeholders in our city. And so we've partnered with the Chamber of Commerce and Local First Arizona to help us with a business climate agenda. We are in the process. We put an RFP out for a local nonprofit to help support a equity and climate justice agenda. We've been working with ASU and they held some listening sessions last week as part of creating a neighborhood and general public agenda. And then we will work with the local nonprofit and ASU on a youth agenda for climate action. So I wanted to make sure that you knew about this engagement that we'll be doing with these 4 critical stakeholder groups. I think these are 4 groups. We can also ask some of the questions that you want to know about livability and sustainability in terms of the workings of this commission. And I'm hopeful that this council committee can help, that we'll be able to give you presentations about the youth agenda, about the neighborhood agenda, about the climate justice agenda, and have some of the stakeholder partners we're working with come present to you about what they're considering to be in their agenda. So this is a little bit different than our first climate action plan in that these agendas are going to include both actions those stakeholders want to take on their own and actions that they want to partner the city on. So this is a little bit different than us just coming up with actions that we want to work on like last time. These are very stakeholder driven agenda items that they'll be coming to us with. All right, next slide. So in terms of how I see the Sustainable and Livability Council Committee working, there's 3 main action areas where I think we can have continued engagement and work with you on. So one is, the Sustainability Commission has recommended that we actually move forward on policy that advances the 4 highlight actions from the first plan. And they've had the idea that we would actually pass policies that would move forward each of the highlight actions by the time we update the climate action plan at the end of the year. And so that could be, some of those policies will need to go through stakeholder engagement. They'll need to work through with city staff. They'll need to be dialogue, both with you and potentially with the whole council. But that policy development seems very much within the realm of this council committee. Secondly, is having the committee engaged in the climate action plan update engagement, especially with the four stakeholder groups that I just mentioned. And then the other is that our office is continually working on regional partnerships, national partnerships, and grants, and being able to have this council committee be aware of those partnerships and give us some guidance and give and contribute to how you feel like we should be handling those partnerships and grant opportunities. I think is going to be an exciting third area for us to work on together. Last slide here. So in terms of next steps, there's these opportunities for the highlight action policy development. Resilient energy hubs is going to really require that we further engage and have SRP and APS come and work with us on this. The Tempe Engineering and Transportation Department is already doing some really impressive work on transportation demand management and mobility hubs. So there'll be an opportunity for them to present to you what they're working on. And then in order for you to get comfortable with what some of the green infrastructure and green construction code policies could look like, there's an opportunity to bring Arizona cities that have done this work already to this committee to present to you what those types of policies could look like. So Tucson for green infrastructure and Scottsdale for green construction code. Then there's the possibility to get on the agenda the different stakeholder groups, so you have a sense of what those groups are talking about when they want to develop their climate action agendas. And then there's also the opportunities to bring in some of our regional partners and advance some of those regional partnership conversations, including with MAG, with Sustainable Cities Network, with Arizona State University, and with some of the national organizations that we participate with on sustainability and resilience policy. So with that, I'll take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Braden. I should call you Dr. K, but so thanks so much. And yeah, I have a couple questions, and then I'm sure Councilmember Adams does as well. But I remember a few years ago, we passed the International Energy Conservation Code, and that was a coup. And thank you for all your work in that. And I strongly want to see the International Green Building Code adopted by our city. And I know the Sustainability Commission does as well. And would love to see the city move forward with more green infrastructure projects. So So what can we do just as a committee? What can we do as a city to really advance this and make sure that the Green Building Code gets adopted? And I know there'll be voluntary aspects of it, and there'll be mandatory aspects within the city operations. And to see that also the green infrastructure projects move forward. What do we need to do to advance this? Because we've been talking about it for a long time. And it feels to me like we have political will now where we didn't maybe a few years back. And I'm so grateful that Councilmember Adams is with me on this. But what can we do as a city and as a committee to help you?
Thanks. So, I think with International Green Construction Code and green infrastructure standards, there are opportunities for us to take action, both in terms of our own infrastructure, which is really the domain of the Engineering and Transportation Department. And then there's the opportunity to work with private development, which is really the domain of community development. So similarly to how our working groups used to work, my recommendation is that, you ask for presentations of what staff thinks is possible. Obviously, I will participate in that, but I think it's really important to have those departments involved in those conversations. And then I think it's also important to learn from other cities as to how they've implemented their policies. So, my recommendation would be for both of these issues to ask for a multi-year roadmap. So I think that there are things that we could do in the very short term. Like, for instance, with the International Green Construction Code, we could choose to build our own buildings using that International Green Construction Code. First, to pilot it with one initial building project, then to make it a requirement that all of our buildings are under International Green Construction Code, and then to voluntarily adopt a standard, and then eventually have this roadmap say, so we would follow Scottsdale's suit, where Scottsdale uses it as a density bonus and in key areas of Scottsdale. So, I think most likely in our conversations with staff, they'll recommend that we don't do that right away, and that there's a bunch of things Scottsdale has done in order to run such a sophisticated program. But that's part of the continual learning that we need to do to understand how we grow a program like this over time. So I think having this committee hear from city staff, hear from other cities, put together a long-term roadmap, and then decide which level of policy adoption is appropriate in the short term would be the best way to go. Green infrastructure standards are very similar. They're green infrastructure advancements that we could make with our own city projects now, and then there can be discussions about how we move that into private development code. So my hope is that between now and the fall, that we can advance those conversations so that we could actually have the opportunity to pass ordinances and show actual progress in the direction of each of the 4 highlight actions.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, maybe it's just, I keep referring to my age. I don't know why, but I'm just so eager to see us adopt and approve these items and get them in front of council earlier than later, because we have been talking about it for so long. And I don't think we're at this, I don't think we need to necessarily like pilot it at the city level and then we'll adopt it at the city level and then we go out to a larger, we know these programs work. We know we're in a climate emergency. And I feel, especially with our, adopting it for our own buildings, that it's important that we adopt these guidelines and adopt these standards before we build our next building, which could be soon, like we could be building another fire station, right? And it was a struggle to get as many green building aspects to our current, the newly open fire station as we got. So I guess, I was going to ask you about the timeline, and I would love to see something presented in March about where we can go. And I mean, we're maybe not ready to present to the council on March 18th. I get that, but I would like to see something sooner than later. And what do you think, Councilmember Adams, about that one issue?
I think that's great. I'm all on board with that.
Thanks, because I know the Sustainability Commission, I won't say they're frustrated because I've attended a lot of the meetings, but I know that they think that before we have more development take place, that we really need to get these standards together. And there are folks within our residents who are working on a density bonus and height program that they want to bring to the city, sort of a grassroots group. So maybe it can be brought up as a part of that project as well. So on another question though, you mentioned regional partnerships, and I'm glad that you said that because it's essential in our climate emergency that we work with regional partners. And we look at sort of electrification and how there's great potential for that. And part of it is that utility business plans and utility interests and the city's interests and environmental interests are aligning in this issue. So I'm eager to see how we can advance electric infrastructure more thoroughly. So just tell me about the relationships with utilities and other stakeholders and how you think they're going to relate to our climate action planning and implementing.
Yeah, so there are two parallel processes that are going on. The Arizona Corporation Commission has a electric vehicle infrastructure task force that Grace Kelly and I have been participating in. We ran the case study working group in this statewide policy process, so we've been deeply engaged in that. That group will be coming out with a report that could come, and they could come present to this committee about that report. SRP has started a accelerator, which is a really interesting program that has businesses and nonprofits and the city and cities all working together on how we advance electric vehicle infrastructure. That accelerator is actually asking cities to create their own official electrification targets, both for their own city fleets and for their cities. And so getting a presentation on that and getting a sense of where other cities are thinking about having real EV roadmaps. I will say last budget cycle and then again in this budget cycle, we've had a line item to build a community EV roadmap, and then the internal services has had a line item, or actually municipal utilities has had a line item for a fleet roadmap. So there are opportunities to invest in how we approach electric vehicle infrastructure, and then both between our work with the Arizona Corporation Commission project and with SRP, those are very important regional partnerships. I do think that anything that Tempe does on electric vehicles, we need to do with both our utilities and these other partners. To go back to your previous comment, I would say I think we could at least have a initial presentation on the International Green Construction Code. We would need to check with staff, but if your recommendation, what I'm hearing from you is you'd like to hear about International Green Construction Code and green infrastructure standards in March, and then we could have SRP is probably going to be our first official partner on the resilient energy hubs, but actually we've been working with APS on a concept as well. So we could potentially have resilient energy hubs come to you in April. And then I can't talk to the timeline for when engineering and transportation would come to you with mobility hubs, but I know that they are interested. They are working on they have a work plan and some outside consultants to work on that. And there should be an appropriate time, but I'm not exactly sure which month would be appropriate yet. We are planning on having them come to the Sustainability Commission to brief the commission as well on those issues.
Yeah, I say bring it on, and you know how I feel about this, and Councilmember Adams. If there's any opportunity that you see out there where we could help with any collaborations or coalition buildings, or if it's a letter from this committee or from the council, like please approach us with any and all ideas of how we can help build coalitions, because that's why we're here. And this is probably an opportunity to say to the public, we have adopted energy goals. We've adopted a climate neutrality goal for 2050 and a 100% renewable energy goal. So you have the priority from council to go out and look at opportunities for collaboration. But sometimes, they get stymied by things like COVID-19 and a global pandemic. And sometimes, though, opportunities arise because of a crisis, because we get additional funding where we can build the resilience hub that is being funded by federal CARES Act funds. So this is a very alive time, and it's a time of great opportunity. So please use us in that way. We know we're not creating the urgency. You already have that urgency, but we're here to be helpers and help provide political will if that's necessary to bring an action before the council where we can get decisions made. So just know that we're here for you, and whatever if you want to bring back something in March 18th related to electrification, I'd be keen to see it. So the mayor and I are participating tomorrow in a press conference about electrification and clean cars. And it's really important to tell this little story about Kevin Devery, who used to be our fleet manager. And you started a number of years ago, and you did your tour around the city and wanting to show staff that you were a helper, a liaison, a concierge for all things sustainability and livability. And, quietly, effectively, the organization has really absorbed that culture, that ethos that had been there already, but it was sort of supercharged by your presence. And Kevin on his own decided he would start buying up electric cars for the fleet. And slowly but surely, we became the leading city for electric cars in I think of 20 cities in Arizona. And that's something to be proud of. And it shows that it doesn't have to be a top-down action. It doesn't have to be ordered by the council or ordered by Braden Kitty, sustainability director, but that as we mature, this organization starts to bubble up and we have grassroots action happening within our staff. I know Councilmember Adams knows this firsthand because she was the leader of sustainability when she was an employee. There's one last thing, and I know I've dominated the time here, and Councilmember Adams, I'm sure, has questions, and I don't know how our finance department feels about this, but most organizations have revolving funds related to climate or renewable energy or sustainability efforts within an organization. And I know Kevin, he is no longer with the city. He took another job, sadly. But I know he'd spoken about revolving fund that he saved so much money on maintenance operations by buying electric cars. He thought, why don't if I could capture the savings that I create, not have it go back to the general fund, but capture that and be able to buy more cars with the savings, that would be a really positive impact in the city. And so is that part of the planning for electrification to consider a revolving fund for our fleet management, or is that not going to be successful because of, I don't know, people not necessarily looking on it favorably?
We have not considered the use of revolving funds. If you wanted to request a presentation on revolving funds, we could talk to the city manager and the chief financial officer about how they want to handle that conversation. But yeah, it's not in any of our plans. We have one idea of a revolving fund in the climate action plan that's a community revolving fund for energy efficiency. But it's not the style of internal revolving fund that you're talking about.
So I mean, this is an opportunity. Oh, sorry, go on, Councilmember Adams.
Yes, I'm just going to kind of jump in on this.
Sure.
First of all, Braden, thanks for the presentation as usual. Appreciate it. And my questions are about the budget. This presentation was wonderful, and I can see that you have a great plan. But we need to have resources because we can't do any of this without resources. And we're just starting the budget process, and we'll be receiving CIP budget proposals as well as supplemental budget requests for the operating budget. And we'll be asked to choose which of the many items competing should receive funding. Can you give some clarity on how what we've talked about today is going to relate to what we'll see in the CIP and budget supplementals?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously there's, as you know, council members Adam and QB, there's both the CIP budget and there's the operating budget. Both community carbon neutrality and municipal carbon neutrality are up for acceleration. They were voted by at least 4 council members to advance as performance measures for acceleration. So the Office of Strategic Management and Diversity will be presenting both of those performance measures. So you will see, when you see the budget acceleration for CIP, you will see budget line items that of what could be funded to advance both municipal carbon neutrality and community carbon neutrality. And then my understanding is that same process will take place as you make this look at the supplemental budget for the operating budget. You'll see the line items and opportunities that have been identified as part of the operating budget for both municipal investment and for community-wide carbon neutrality investment. So you're absolutely right. If we're going to move forward, we need to look at opportunities for investments. All of those investments will be subject to the entire budgeting process. So you look at all of those decisions at once. But because they're both accelerated items, you will see Grace Kelly and I have worked on specific proposals that highlight all of the CIP investments and all of the operating budget supplemental line items that could be invested in to advance this work. Just to give you an example, For the CIPs, it's our transportation CIP. We have a solar CIP item for energy efficiency, a solar CIP item for a renewable energy and our solar partnerships program. And then on the supplemental side, we've broken it down into investments in energy, investments in transportation, investments in resilience to extreme heat, and then investments in our sort of general Office of Sustainability program. And you'll be able to see that clearly as part of the acceleration memos for both the CIP budget and the supplemental budget.
Okay, thank you so much, Frank. I know the original climate action plan has been very popular with our residents and with, I know Councilmember Cubie and myself and others on council. And I know they have a lot of expectations that we're going and moving the city in the right direction. So I want to make sure that I understand exactly how we should be investing now to make sure we're meeting our residents' expectations. So thanks so much. It sounds like you're right on track, Braden, with this. So I appreciate the answers.
Thanks, Council Member Adams, and having the two of you on this committee to be able to look at some of these items more closely over the coming months, I think is a tremendous opportunity for you all to understand the types of opportunities that lay ahead of us, both with investments, with programs, with regional partnerships, and look forward to continuing the dialogue in coming meetings.
Great, thanks so much.
Adams, and I know we've heard discussion, we're in the midst of a local to global pandemic, and there's an opportunity not to waste a good crisis. As cynical as that sounds, I don't mean it to be that way, but we know that we have inequalities and inequities in our system, and we know that we're having a huge public health emergency. We also know that we're in a climate crisis, so there is an opportunity to kind of think holistically about a lot of the issues that are that we're facing. And I know a couple of years ago when we talked about equity in our planning for a host of projects, it was sort of met with blank stares. But now I think people see the connections, right? That inequities that have always been there have been further exposed by the pandemic. So I'm hoping this committee can serve in that way to help you advance initiatives, and always with that equity lens. And you've given us a blueprint. I just want to know, and I'm fully in support of the blueprint, but just want to know from you, what more can we do to help you? How can this committee, we used to do working groups on individual little items, but how can this committee best support you and your work going forward?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the equity and climate justice issues. As part of the COVID relief funding, Mayor and Council funded a pilot project in energy equity and climate justice. And so we are just hiring a nonprofit to do that work. Part of what that nonprofit is going to be doing is helping us create a climate justice agenda and finding Tempe residents that really want to advocate for these issues. And so, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for, as this nonprofit comes on board, for them to bring Tempe residents to you that want to work on, energy efficiency programs, that want to work on neighborhood-based green infrastructure and urban forestry projects. And my hope is that with this type of partnership, it changes the way that we do this type of equity-focused climate justice work, and that we bring new faces and new programs and new ideas to you all through this committee. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for that to take place with this new nonprofit partnership. And I think we really, who knows where this all goes. I think another piece of this that's really important is that when we do that work with communities like in Escalante and near Gilliland Middle School and Victory Acres, that some of our partners aren't hearing from those voices. So, having you be able to work with those partners to go to the SRP board, or to be able to make sure that those voices are being heard with partners like Valley Metro, that you really do have the opportunity to spread this way of working on sustainability and climate justice through the Valley. And so when we applied for the Robert Wood Johnson grant to fund the Cool Kids program, part of the reason that we won that $600,000 to do work for the next 3 years is because the foundation was really inspired by this idea that Tempe could develop a way of working, a way of centering Indigenous voices, a way of centering people of color, a way of centering neighborhoods that have been underinvested in into the regional conversations around sustainability and resilience. And so my hope is that this committee can use the tools that it has in front of them and the partnerships that we're developing to create a new way of doing this type of work, both in our region and in Arizona. And I'm really excited to work on that with you. I know it sounds a little vague now, but once we get some people and policies in front of you using this new brand of working, I think we'll develop a culture of climate justice that we can all be really proud of.
And I'm also hoping that Councilmember Adams and I can co-author some editorials where we can explain to the community what's going on in this committee and the leading work that we're doing in Tempe, because sometimes you all are so busy doing the amazing work that you don't have enough time to tout it. And we want to take credit for everything you're doing. No, not really. We want to be able to champion that and help that to move forward, not just with our council colleagues, but across the region, because we're gonna live or die by our regional cooperation. We can't do it alone. We can't resolve the climate crisis as one city, but we know that cities in general are the main contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to drive this change. And the last thing before we move on, I just wanted to ask you, do you think it'd be valuable to the city to enact and pass a climate crisis resolution like Flagstaff and Tucson have had? Do you think that's something that would be helpful, or what do you think?
The climate emergency as it stands alone, just as a declaration, I'm not sure really advances climate efforts and can take time. What I will say is that both the Tucson movement and the Flagstaff movement, they were not staff-based movements. They were, community members that came to the city and really felt the need for the cities to move forward in a more aggressive way. So with Flagstaff, for instance, they established, I'm very close both with the director and with their climate program manager, so Nicole Antonopoulos and Jenny Nyman. And so I've stayed very close to the process that's been happening in Flagstaff. They have now taken that declaration and they're adopting a 2030 climate carbon neutrality plan for the city. It's an incredibly aggressive plan. They're following the footsteps of Ann Arbor, which has put together $1 billion, 10-year roadmap for decarbonization. So that kind of movement is certainly something that cities can eventually do. I would say, in my professional opinion, we're not quite there yet. I think we need to pass our climate action update. I think we need to make some more incremental investments in our work before we're ready for a full kind of carbon neutrality plan in the way that Flagstaff is doing. But I definitely see the appeal of adding that level of urgency and adding that level of intention to the work. And that can be something that we're listening for as we do our update, and we're listening to residents and our youth and different constituencies in terms of what kind of policies are really thinking that mayor and council should look at.
Well, thank you. Councilmember Adams, do you have anything more to add?
Yes, I do. I can put the video back on. There we go. Yes, I would like to make an announcement. Councilmember TV, I would like to announce that we'll be hosting a Facebook Live event on March 3rd at 4 p.m. for folks to get information.
Councilmember QB, we are not on the next item of announcements yet. We're still on sustainability.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, let me switch. I was hoping we could be a little more informal, but I realized, very good, Alex. But yeah,
okay.
The next item on our agenda is item 3C, announcements. So Councilmember Adams, do you have any announcements to make?
Yes, I do. Sometimes I get ahead of myself. I apologize. So
No
I would like to announce once again that Tempe will be hosting a live event on March 3rd at 4 p.m. for folks to get information about COVID-19 vaccine, how it works, how effective it is, and where you can get the vaccine. The event will be presented by our amazing Tempe Fire Medical Rescue Department and Tempe St. Luke's Hospital. You can view it on tempe.gov/Tempe11 or facebook.com/City of Tempe. If you have any questions to ask during the event, please give them to Chris Baxter at Chris_Baxter, that's BAXTER @tempe.gov. Thanks, and that's the only announcement I had, Councilmember QB.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. I appreciate that. And thanks for leading on that. I know you were a proponent and really pushing for that to happen because we need to hear from real trusted sources, and nobody's more trusted in Tempe, I think, than Greg Reese and Chief Glass and Chief Duty. So thanks so much for your involvement in that event.
You bet.
Announcements? Yeah, thank you. Other announcements, and you can, I'll put this on my Facebook page, but on April 7th, I'm working in my other job at ASU. We're going to host an event called Solve Climate by 2030. It's in cooperation with Bard College, and 100 universities are taking part. And each event is supposed to spotlight the big ideas and big actions that are important to solve climate in your state. So in the case of our webinar, we're going to have Masabi Perea from Chispa, a group that is just very much involved actually with the city of Tempe in our climate action plan. He's going to talk about climate solutions. We'll have Tucson's mayor, Regina Romero, talking about her programs in Tucson, especially her Million Trees program. And then we're hoping to have Nicole Horseherder or someone from the Navajo Reservation of Dene Cares to talk about a just energy transition now that the Navajo generating station is closed. So I'm really excited about that event, and I'll make sure y'all hear about it and know about it. And lastly, there is a Tempe Budget Forum happening this evening. It's at 6 o'clock. If you want to attend and give feedback, just go to tempe.gov and you'll see our community events calendar and click on the forum, which is today, just a little bit of time in 40 minutes, and we'll take you to the meeting link. And I know it's a lot of business to deal with the city, but deciding our budget reflects our values and our operations, and it's really important that you tune in. It is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to get a download on the budget in a different time, but please tune in, and encourage you all to attend, even if it's just for a short while Ken Jones, our Chief Financial Officer, presents the tentative ideas for the budget. So that being said, let's move on. And I want to let you know that our next meeting is going to be Wednesday, March 24th. We're going to keep our meetings. Today was different because of the budget forum, but we're going to have our meetings at 6 o'clock, the last Wednesday of the month. At times we may have to go to extra meetings, but right now we have a minimum of 1 meeting a month. So the last Wednesday of the month, and I'm really excited to see you from here and here on out. And wanted to also ask Braden Kay, if he's still on the line, I would love to have Sustainability Commissioner attend as a regular part of our meeting, and someone from the Neighborhood Advisory Commission attend if we can. I know this is the first among many of our committee meetings, but I know our commissions sometimes don't feel heard in our city. So I think our committee is a perfect opportunity, because one of our driving goals is to increase citizen engagement, to hear from some of our commissioners. It doesn't have to be the same member every time, but I think it would be good to have a liaison from Neighborhood Advisory and Transportation and Sustainability. So I just want to throw that out there. Anyway, thanks everyone for being here, and we are now adjourned. I have no gavel, but you'll hear me adjourn.
Councilmember QB, can I just jump in 1 second?
Please jump. Leap. Yes.
I think it's a great idea to have the commissioners attend. I know I share your feeling with a lot of commissioners. They don't feel valued, and we really want to get them more included and participate in our decision-making processes. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm also really excited to work with you on this committee. It's, you've been leading the charge a lot on sustainability, and it's really nice to have a partner on sustainability issues. So I look forward to working with you and with our community and making our city even more livable. So thanks, Councilmember QB, for your help, and thanks to everyone for participating on our call.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams. So we are now adjourned. Take care, everyone. Have a good week.